2030.
Saudi Arabia, the public investment fund,
It's a
there's a
big
lot of
vision.
excitement
This
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla.
This is the 2030, episode 42. Ahlan, everybody. Hello, Hanaa Almoaibed. What's up? Kay Falik, how are things?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. How are you? Ahla wa sahla.
Thank you. That was a really formal answer you just gave there. I feel like you just read that. No, things are good.
I didn't read it.
Okay, good. You didn't have like a prepared hello response. Excellent. No, things are good here in Riyadh, of course, still. 70-degree days, 40-degree nights. It's awesome. Super busy with life and work. Everything's great. I've had some, Hanaa, mobility issues here in Saudi Arabia. Mobility has been a theme of the podcast recently, of course. I had a rental car here that died after a dinner on the other side of the city, and it's still there. I haven't done anything about it, so I got to deal with that. I don't know what you do, but I got to call the rental company guys, and it just seems like half a day. So I've had time to deal with that, but I also got into an Uber accident.
You probably want to do that quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Thank you. I'm okay. Yeah. It was one of those things where I was on my laptop in the back working, which is why I like Uber, because it gives me 20 minutes or 30 minutes on the hotspot, whatever. And then just looked up and there's just a huge bang. And then I was in a sedan, and this big F-150, a newer one, one that I would love to have here, just completely drove over the car that I was in. And so, yeah, it was kind of cool. I got to see what happens when you get into a car accident here. There's an app that you video.
NEOM.
Is that what it is? NEOM?
Well, I don't know about the app, but NEOM is the company that comes. It's outsourced to the company because it takes police a while to get there. So everything got outsourced to NEOM, and then they come and they do all the report, and then they submit that to the police. As far as I understand, that's how it works.
Okay. Yeah.
I have not been in an accident. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, but it was cool because it was they first of all, the two drivers shook hands, which would not happen in the United States of America, and then they both got out this app.
They punch each other?
No, it would just be a really awkward, you'd stand and be what are you doing? And there'd be an exchange that wouldn't be friendly necessarily.
Of insurance in the U.S. It's the first thing. It's can I see your insurance?
You have to have it. And I think you have to have it here. But I think you put your insurance through that app. And so they're walking around the car, taking photos. And, it wasn't completely friendly, old friends kind of thing. But it was definitely a little bit more civil than it would be in the U.S., which was cool to see. And then I just did I've been in a few Uber accidents before, not here, but when that happens, I'm just hey, is everybody okay? All right, I'm out. I'm getting in another Uber. So I was out of there pretty quickly. Another car came to pick me up in 2 seconds, but I was bye.
But they didn't need a statement from you, as a test, a witness statement.
I don't think so. I hope
they
not.
didn't ask for one.
Am I in trouble for fleeing the scene now? I don't know. Maybe.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll expect Uber HQ, if I'm lucky, to be chasing me down on that. But yeah, no.
I don't think it'd be Uber. I think it'd be NEOM or the Saudi police that are going to chase you down for a statement, if anything.
Well, good luck finding me.
Yeah.
I'm now on the internet everywhere, and the show is everywhere. It's been really cool getting a lot of recent feedback on our Metro sub segment with Gada, which was super cool. People are talking about that and kind of weighing in with their own. Everybody wants to see the memes that we talked about from Gada. So I've had to manually send those along. We'll try to drop them somewhere, but you sent me one.
It's hard to drop memes.
Yeah, it's hard to drop memes. We're not meme droppers here, podcasters.
Not really.
But yeah, no, that was such a cool conversation. If you haven't heard it yet, go listen or watch it, please. But yeah, people are taking the Metro here. I'm getting a lot of screenshots too of people being hey, look at this. It's 45 minutes by car, but because traffic's so bad, it's 25 minutes by Metro. See, you get a real side-by-side comparison going on. And it's always cool to see. Traffic, can be beaten by Metro. So we have a cool episode coming up now, 42. Dr. Hanaa is going to do a deep dive on
Saudi women's football.
Okay, you told me that and I forgot, so I just blanked.
That's
so
okay.
We're going to do a deep dive on Saudi women's football. And again, if you haven't followed us yet or subscribed and you're listening to for the first time, just hit subscribe so that we can blast this thing directly into your phone and into your inbox as well. It's super helpful for us, but it's also good for you. Like you don't have to search us out. I've got a lot of questions like, where is it? And I'm like, it's on the internet. You can find it wherever. So yeah, let's do it, Dr. Hanaa. Let's get to your deep dive.
Let's get to a deep dive. So my deep dive today is about women and football in Saudi Arabia. And I know we talk about sports a lot and it's not really my area, but there's so much more about women and football than women in football when you're talking about women's football in Saudi Arabia. So I really wanted to highlight this report that NEOM just put out. It was a report that was done in partnership with the Asian Football Confederation. They announced this publication. The report's called Pioneering Change, Women's Football in Saudi Arabia. And it shines light on just kind of what's happening in the current landscape. NEOM apparently are the presenting partner of the inaugural AFC Women's Champions League. So they're committed to reporting on this and really actually kind of being part of women's football and the growth of it across the kingdom. So in recent years, Saudis witnessed remarkable transformation in football for women. Since women actually began attending football stadiums in 2018, the sport has experienced a surge in popularity. It's basically in alignment with Vision 2030 goals. And this transformation isn't just about the sport. It's really about empowering women. It's about challenging social norms. And it's about building a more inclusive society. So let's start with a little bit on the progress. What milestones have been achieved? It's been rapid and it's been significant. 4 national teams have been launched. There are 6 domestic competitions, including the Saudi Arabian Football Federation Women's Premier League. 6 youth regional training centers have been established, and the Saudi women's national team has earned an official FIFA ranking. There's been 195% increase in professional players and over 1,500 registered players, of which over 940 are Saudi nationals. So incredible growth, very short period of time. What's driving the success? Several things, a combination of factors is obviously at play here. The number one is obviously investment. Government investment. The Saudi government is investing heavily in sports, aligning with Vision 2030, which has already greatly propelled women's football, but also grassroots initiatives. So the Girls Schools League has seen massive participation with over 70,000 female players in 2023, which is a 46% increase, a year-on-year increase. Regional training centers have also seen massive participation increases from 22 to 192 players between 2021 and 2023. Role models in coaching are another factor. High-profile international coaches, Monica Stab is one of them, and Luis Cortez. These other successful Saudi coaches as well, like Dana Rajab, they have been essential in inspiring young girls to pursue coaching careers as well. There are now over 1,000 coaches and over 35 women referees. And also commercialization. So partnerships with global brands like Lay's and Rexona, alongside kind of increased broadcast coverage. These have all boosted revenue as well as visibility. So it's a full ecosystem. It's a real transformation. And there's social impact, of course. And that's my favorite part of this story. So obviously, one of them is just better gender equity. Women's football is a catalyst for giving women more space to be part of the transformation journey that's happening within the sports industry. And they're also now a big part of promoting healthier lifestyles and national pride. Challenging norms, which of course is a really healthy thing in a transitioning economy with a really young population. So the sport is challenging some of those social norms that may have been holding women back from participating more publicly or openly in things like sports. So this is creating new pathways for female athletes and women in multiple different channels. If you can see a woman succeed as a football player, then you can imagine yourself in a lot of different places. Also community building, which is very important. So football, it builds character, it builds resilience, it prepares young people for life's challenges. It also provides a sense of belonging for many young girls, and belonging is usually the prerequisite to any self-development and growth and transformation in education as well. And finally, like I mentioned before, national pride. The rising visibility of women athletes is fostering a growing sense of national pride. Campaigns like #CSPlay are encouraging engagement as well as increasing and encouraging more viewership. And this means that there are a lot of reasons why families might start to change their perception and encourage their daughters to participate in football and kind of professional sports in general. Families are becoming more supportive as they see the benefits that football brings, including character building and academic support. There's a specific focus to ensure a balance between schoolwork and sport when it comes to getting women involved in sports and young girls involved in sports as well. So it helps that there are female coaches that are acting as role models who can really communicate these values more clearly to young girls, and also they can communicate with families more effectively as well. So I guess the next question is about professionalization. If we're building this ecosystem, we're investing, there's grassroots, there's coaches, there are no new players, what's happening? So much. New elite leagues. So the establishment of elite leagues and player development pathways is rapidly professionalizing women's football in general. Youth academies, there's a focus on developing youth academies to create a continuous stream of talent into the new leagues. Facilities, so some clubs like Al Ittihad are sharing facilities with their men's teams to ensure access to really high quality training facilities. But others like in Nasser, for instance, are investing in dedicated facilities for their women's teams. Financial support. So the Women's Club Development Fund program has risen to 60 million riyals, which is around $16 million for the 2024-25 season, demonstrating a commitment to financial development of the sport. And the standardization of resources. The Saudi Arabian Football Federation, SAFF, provides equal resources to both men and women's teams, which is not always the case in other countries. And mentorship. There's an increased focus on mentorship programs by experienced international players to help young athletes through these transitions. And there are efforts being made to build a strong fan base. And this is something that you might be able to chime in on a little bit more, Lucian, because this is something that you talk about quite a bit. Sports is an industry that makes a lot of money, and you need to basically be able to broadcast that, and you need to broadcast it to a fan base. So there is growing fandom. Women's football fans are younger, they're more educated, and they're more affluent than men's sports fans, apparently. This is, again, according to the report. And then there's also more engagement. 48% of women football fans in Saudi Arabia watch women's football regularly, and 28% participate regularly. 61% of women fans are planning on attending live matches, which, again, I've been to some of the live matches at the Arsenal here, which is kind of my local stadium and where my children like to go. But the men's games are always completely fully booked. And while there's increasing viewership of the women's live matches, it's not the same. So you need to basically build this fan base to make sure that these games do sell out. And there's a focus on storytelling and creating relatable narratives that attract fans, kind of inspirational stories of players. These are particularly compelling for young girls. And finally, of course, the marketing. There's an understanding that there's a need for effective marketing in order to reach and engage target audiences, as well as emphasis on providing a more inclusive and family-friendly experience. But it's more than just football, as you see. It's much more about wider social change. I think women's football is seen as a key part of the nation's progress. First of all, women in general are a huge part of Vision 2030. But watching women grow in a sport like this, in a place where sports were not even allowed to be taught in schools just a few years back, this is incredible. It's an opportunity to build a new, incredibly innovative commercial model for sports, free from kind of some of those legacy constraints that you see here at the Arsenal, for instance. So by developing talent and attracting international experience and providing resources, Saudi really is aiming to become a leader when it comes to women's football. Now, I'm going to end with obviously a few challenges that still remain because there's always going to be challenges. Again, this is a new industry in a country that is still very conservative and did not have a thriving women's football league until just very recently. So there are infrastructure issues. There's a need for more dedicated facilities, particularly in rural areas, to really ensure equitable access. There's an investment gap. Of course, there needs to be an effort to address that investment gap between men's and women's football at the club level, especially. There's, that problem of balancing growth and sustainability. We have a lot of investment that's going into it. So how can you ensure that rapid growth is going to be sustainable, inclusive, and involve all regions? That should definitely be a priority. And of course, the marketing of the game. So the need for more sports media coverage in the Middle East in general. That's going to require more investment to reach the target audiences. But the journey is just beginning, and it is definitely full of promise. So I think that this was a great report by NEOM, and I was super happy to stumble upon it and figured it was just released a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, I think. It was such a fascinating read for me, and just to be able to bring it all together and present it. So we have something to really discuss when we're talking about women's sports, because we bring it up so much. And a lot of times we're talking about fights and we're talking about, Mohamed Salah coming and joining Al Hilal and whatever. But I think that, again, when we talk about women and sports in Saudi Arabia, it's a lot of times often also presented negatively in Western media. And I think that this is a story that needs to be told. So I'm really happy to bring the deep dive, and I would love to hear your feedback.
I mean, I think the key thing is that 4 years ago, there was really no such thing as a women's football scene in Saudi Arabia. I mean, 3 years ago, Saudi Arabia developed its international women's team and played its first international match 3 years ago. So that much has happened and that much is building in the sport indicates that, yes, we are at the very beginning of a long journey, but the progress in just those 3 years is insane. I mean, how do you square the circle of the sports washing accusation, which we talked about last show, with what's happening in women's football? You absolutely cannot. You mentioned Monica Stab. She said recently, I've worked around the world for 18 years in 90 countries. I've never seen a federation working and supporting women's football more than here in Saudi Arabia. I think having been part of this from the start has really helped me understand the different level we are at now. It's amazing how much progress has been made. I mean, yes, and now NEOM has crystallized that progress into numbers, into this report, which is fantastic. We will share it wherever you're hearing this or watching this. I think something that's really interesting to me as well is when you're talking about football, which, when we talk about sports in general, right? That's a big sort of broad brushstroke. There's a lot happening in sports in Saudi Arabia today, right? Golf and fighting and everything you mentioned. But football is by far the most popular sport in Saudi Arabia. It's not even close. I mean, when there are big matches happening in the Saudi Pro League, I mean, traffic goes to nothing. People are around TVs, and if you're in the right neighborhood, you can go by a coffee shop or a restaurant and see everyone collected around the TV watching these big matches. It's a huge passion here, and therefore it's a massive opportunity for authorities to develop into, yes, I'm going to talk about it, a business. But then you also mentioned, which I think is super important, the spillover effects, right? So like the inspiration it gives to other people in Saudi Arabia, especially women and especially young women. I mean, when you are watching women compete at this high level, then you want to be part of it. Then it has health benefits, right? People see and understand better the advantages of working out and being healthy and living a healthy lifestyle. There's a ton of other stuff happening in Saudi football. I mean, just last month, the Royal Commission for Al Ula announced the launch of a women's football development project specifically for Al Ula, which is amazing. And then Saudi Arabia is also doing work on the international stage. And I'm not talking about bringing Neymar here or Ronaldo. What is happening here is sort of an all-out, all-hands-on-deck effort, and you just love to see it. So you have, with 20, 30 years of that, you have young girls wanting to get into soccer and following soccer for the rest of their life. It's just amazing to see all of these things sort of happening at once. And again, it has nothing to do with affecting what people from the outside think of here. It's more about developing the economy, the society. I mean, society is one of the three pillars of Vision 2030. It's easy to kind of lose sight of that when you see cranes in every direction and, focus on non-oil GDP, et cetera. But like quality of life is a huge part of what they're doing. I want to do a quick shout out to Hisham Shahabi. He runs a sports consulting agency here in Riyadh called Next Sports. And they do some really cool research on the Saudi sports sector in general. 85% of online audiences right now are engaging with SPL clubs via mobile, but only 55% of clubs have mobile data collection capabilities. Those are the opportunities here in Saudi Arabia in sports. If you're on the outside looking in, thinking about how I can be part of this, there are so many opportunities for that. And then there are even more at the women's level. I just think this is a cool report. I'm glad you shared it.
So, I mean, absolutely. I think that you brought up some really important points. And as you said, it's a really, it's a short history and so much is left to kind of write in this journey. I think it's so exciting. I know a couple of women who have been playing football, and some of them were my students back in the day when I used to be a teacher, and I'm watching them grow in their sport. So, I think that there were opportunities to play sports as teams, but they were so limited, and they were also there was no room for growth. And what is exciting about what's happening with sports in Saudi for women today is there's so much room for growth. There is a huge void that we need to fill. And so the opportunities are endless. And I'm excited that in 10 years, Saudi's going to host the Men's World Cup, but that means that potentially they could host a Women's World Cup. You do have the women's football team competing internationally now, which is very exciting. But you also have these youth leagues that are growing, and they're going to turn into, the next football professionals. I'm just, I'm very happy. I don't have daughters, but I'm happy that this is what the future looks like for young Saudi girls, because I do think that when I grew up, I aged myself, but I was kind of really into a couple of the World Cups, the earliest one, maybe even, where Saudi was competing. And I got into soccer because of that. I felt like I knew what was going on. It was a game I understood. It's really the only sports game where I can sit down and I just get it without somebody having to explain to me, take me to a American football game and I don't know what's going on. I can't tell. Somebody has to explain it. I know the terminology a little bit, but whatever. But that was only because I went to a school that had a big football team, but I don't really know anything about them. So anyway, it's exciting that women have a space in this place, because I was just a spectator before, and from my own home on TV, instead of being in the stadium or actually being able to play. And now women can do that. Girls can aspire to be that. And that's the most exciting part, is the future is so bright for anybody that does want to be part of the sport. So I'm just, again, that's my personal kind of bit to it. But I think that I'm not the only one that shares that feeling. I have friends whose daughters play professional football. I have this just kind of newfound appreciation for the opportunities that are there, and excitement for people who want to be part of it.
Yeah, just to kind of wrap this up, Monica Staub, I read a quote from her earlier. This is part of a larger Al Arabia piece where she kind of does a longer interview, and she talks a little bit about more on the ecosystem side of things being built out. Coach education licensing has exploded. Starting point of 0 professionally qualified coaches, rising to 2 single A licensed, 28 B licensed, 185 C licensed, and more than 1,000 D licensed coaches and teachers now able to coach football. And then she goes on to talk about how, just at the grassroots level, it's sort of now, because this is key, right? Why is Brazil and, some of these other countries just absolutely dominating every single World Cup, and not just Brazil, but Germany and Denmark and, these other places where kids are playing soccer. And we're talking about the World Cup here, not a private league. But if you look at the EPL and these Bundesliga and these other leagues, it's a ton of Brazilians and a ton of people from places where soccer was part of childhood. And that's why there are no Americans in those leagues, or very few, right? She says sports was not a priority for any schools in Saudi Arabia, boys or girls, before, but this has changed. Of course, there is still some prejudice for girls to overcome, and we still have to convince some of the parents that it's okay for them to play football. But this is the same in traditionally conservative cultures across the world. However, the big celebration here is that for girls who haven't had a sporting platform for so many years, it is remarkable that parents can now say, my daughter could become a professional footballer. If they are committed enough, they can live a life that they have dreamed of. For our national team players who are 28, 29, 30 years old, it is a paradise that they have found recognition for the first time. Every women's Premier League game is on TV and broadcast to millions of people. They have contracts, they're earning money, and they're understandably very proud of that. Like, yes, so like this is what's happening here in Saudi Arabia now, and it's so cool. I really appreciate you sharing this report. It's very awesome. Great deep dive. Dr. Hanaa, let's get to the news.
Thank you very much. Let's get to the news. Yeah, let's get to the news.
Let's get to the news, Dr. Hanaa. I think 2025 is going to be a headline-making year for Saudi Arabia's tech scene, and we're off to a very solid start in that respect. This week, NEOM, a Saudi digital security firm, has agreed to purchase Thika. Is it Thika?
It's hard to say if you don't speak Arabic, I think.
Oh, that sounds way in the back of your mouth. I'm just going to go with Thika.
Trust.
Yeah. Like if I keep eating rice here, I'm going to get Thika. This is a business service company from Thika.
It's actually not that hard. Qaf is one of the more, it's not like there's some others that are harder, but like you're gargling.
Okay. Oh, like I'm gargling. Okay. I mean, we don't have a gargle vowel in the Thika. Got it. Okay. Better. Thika, a business services company, has from the PIF, from the Public Investment Fund, for $906 million. NEOM's acquisition strategy involves a cash transaction following negotiations that started in 2023. That is quite the long journey to get to this point. So mabruk to both parties. Thika specializes in services like IT, information security, consulting, data center operations. You see their billboards actually all over Riyadh. Post-announcement, NEOM's shares surged 5%, reflecting market confidence. Ding, 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 ding. Good for them. The deal not only expands NEOM's service offerings, but also strengthens its position in the burgeoning digital economy of Saudi Arabia and does highlight PIF strategy and its local content strategy specifically to develop national tech champions locally here in Saudi Arabia. And that sort of has some spillover effects, as anyone in VC or entrepreneurship knows intimately, especially when developing something like this from scratch in Saudi Arabia, which is super cool. I predicted last year would be kind of the M&A year in tech in Saudi Arabia. I was a little early on that, and I think more is going to happen in mergers and acquisitions in Saudi Arabia in the tech scene as sort of bigger players take on smaller players, bring them into the portfolio, and it could be at the beginning of a trend of consolidation in this space. But you also had the launch of a new 500 global tech fund this week as well, 2 days ago, yesterday, which will be run by Hanaa Almoaibed, who is my boy and is the man and really, really good at venture capital. So they found the right dude for that. So there's a lot going on in tech. This is a great start for 2025.
Yeah, congratulations to Amjad. I worked with him. I'm pretty sure he's the catalyst behind the WIN Fellowship of the Atlantic Council, which is...
Indeed he is, yep.
Yeah. So when as a visiting senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, I was brought in kind of to work with them on that specific initiative. So I think, just kind of being part of the Atlantic Council while he was setting that up and running it was great, because there were a lot of events that Amjad was speaking at and really kind of laying out the vision of what we need to do in order to really find, basically scalable companies in the kingdom and in the region that are not replicating the same kind of models, but actually being the next unicorn, the next big thing. How can we really push thinking to do that? And I think that that's great. So I'm glad Amjad's in that space. But in terms of this merger, I think merger acquisition, which one is it? I think that this is an exciting thing to happen as well. And I'm just going to stop talking actually.
No, I think what you were saying, don't give up. I think what you're saying is right. It's an acquisition because it's a purchase.
I'm acquired.
Yeah,
Got
exactly.
it.
Yeah. So
I didn't. Yeah.
No,
I was thinking about how to pronounce the word more than I was listening to the actual news. So
can I tell you just a really short, so I was on a call yesterday and I got a really horrible sleep the night before, and it was just like meetings across Riyadh in an Uber, like in every single direction, like 20 of them it felt like. And then I got home and did a call and I was unable to say the word championing. Championing. I couldn't do it. And I tried 9 times, and then somebody stepped in and they were like, championing. They were so impatient about it. And I'm kind of scarred by that. My brain could not do it. And I was like,
sometimes
it's so embarrassing.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes. I mean, I'm still, I told you, I'm still not 100% here. So
I feel like I need to get some sleep, but congrats to all involved. Congrats to the shareholders who saw that nice little bump as a result of this. And hopefully this results in significant growth for Elm, which is super cool.
So the Royal Commission for Jebel and Yanbu'a is joining the World Economic Forum's Transitioning Industrial Clusters to Sustainable Development Initiative. That is a mouthful initiative, but really what it's doing is
what's the sorry to cut you off. What's the TICSI?
TICSDI. There's a D in there as well.
So it doesn't even make a good acronym. All right. Sorry to interrupt. But okay.
Nope, not a good one.
We'll work on that. Maybe
that's okay. It's a great initiative, though, because what it is, they just launched it in collaboration with Accenture and the Electric Power Research Institute. So those two should have worked on the name a little bit more. But anyway, it aims to accelerate the decarbonization of industrial clusters. And Jebel Industrial City has joined that initiative, which is exciting news. It's even more exciting because at Davos, where the World Economic Forum annual conference is taking place at the moment and the Saudi delegation is there, the Minister of Finance, His Excellence, just noted that Saudi Arabia might actually meet its 23 renewables target ahead of schedule. And it is moves like these that are enabling them to do that. So Davos is underway. Saudi delegation is there under the leadership of Prince Faisal bin Farhan, the foreign minister, and a lot is going on. All of the ministerial delegates that are there have been making great announcements and really situating what Saudi's been doing with the economy over the past few years. Everything is pointing to having a vision and having government, commercial entities, private sector, as well as individuals really just driven by one vision with a long-term view that will enable us to reach our goals, because it's a great way to really consolidate efforts into achieving very, very tangible, sustainable goals. So it's, I think, a wonderful announcement to be made, a great initiative to join. There's so much else that's going on at Davos. I'm not going to cover all of it, but I thought that was a pretty cool one.
Didn't make it to Davos, by the way. Got a lot of questions about that could not leave. There's too much going on in Riyadh. That's one reason. The other reason is it is so cold there, and I had no winter stuff. I came here with my beach, only kind of outfits. So that would have been a challenge, but there's so much going on there. They must not have signed on the Accenture sort of add-on where it's we'll come up with a really sweet name for this thing. They must have been we're good with transitioning industrial clusters to sustainable investment development initiative. Okay. But yeah, very, very cool. My favorite thing about Davos is the outfits. I know a lot of high-level talks are happening there, but I love seeing Rami Al-Turki is there. Did an interview with Laura Habib. He looked super dapper in his sort of suit with the, that's the Davos scarf. And then it's and then you're on CNBC and you're sitting in that chair, and then you got the scarf, or sometimes it's a Fratagonia that you're just rocking. That's my favorite thing about this whole thing. But I mean, there's a lot of really important stuff going on. President Trump also gave some remarks at Davos, which was, headline making. But yeah, very cool. Do you have any more to add?
Yeah, shout out to Rami. I also saw that he was there speaking.
He looks
at
handsome
Davos.
dude, right?
Yeah. Shout out to Rami. I also noticed that he was there. Great guy. Does incredible work in the Eastern Province. So.
Oh, a fellow Eastern Province guy. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Speaking of Davos, great transition here. They don't always work out this well. This one does. We may be looking at a new era in U.S.-Saudi relations, and politics aside, this is one area I care about. I care about this for Democrats, and I care about this for Republicans. This is something that I want. Saudi Arabia's crown prince said Thursday the kingdom wants to invest $600 billion in the United States over the next 4 years. The comments came after President Trump put a price tag on returning to the kingdom as his first foreign trip. I mean, there you go. The comments were reported by the Saudi press agency from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and they came in a phone call with Mr. Trump between His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Quote, this is from the Saudi press agency, the Crown Prince affirmed the kingdom's intention to broaden its investments and trade with the United States over the next 4 years. Let's go, in the amount of $600 billion and potentially beyond that, the report said. Of course, sovereign wealth funds in Saudi Arabia have taken large stakes in American businesses while also looking at sports as well. It is likely, and I'm just going out on a limb here, that defense will be a huge part of this $600 billion, which is an unbelievably large amount of money, and I'm very happy to hear about it. We will see U.S.-made weapons and defense systems, of course, world leading, who can debate it, and they are sought after by Saudi Arabia as they are with partners around the world. Of course, Trump, straight from the Art of the Deal playbook, just really couldn't help but be greedy about it. He jumped right into his Manhattan real estate negotiator vibe, and he said, I'll be asking the Crown Prince, who is a fantastic guy, to round it out to $1 trillion, he said during a remote address to the World Economic Forum in Davos. There's a tie-in. That's unbelievable re-raise in poker, you call it. It is clear that ties between President Trump and the kingdom remain warm, and they have been ever since his last presidency. If you can say one thing about Trump and Saudi relations, it is that the most unpredictable variable in all of this here is Trump himself. He hasn't been all positive about Saudi recently, and you have seen some news articles about Saudi Arabia sort of understanding that the future here in the next 4 years, the geopolitical dynamics have changed, of course. You have Israel's war in Gaza. You have instability elsewhere in the region. So it has shifted the map a little bit. As Semaphore notes, the president chided Saudi Arabia and OPEC for failing to bring down oil prices. He said, quote, frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do it before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it. He said at Davos. I mean, it's so funny. You read a quote from him and you're like, yeah, he definitely said it that. He said that and that way. Trump is also seeking Saudi cooperation on broader goals, including the normalization of ties with Israel that would further deepen security links between Washington and Riyadh, of course. And as discussed on this podcast recently, that's going to take the establishment of a Palestinian state. So yeah, what we have here, Dr. Hanaa, we are in the right space. The transformation, I mean, the U.S. is, a result of this election, right, is there will be warmer ties between Washington and Riyadh. And this is the first sort of foray into that. So there you go.
The warmer ties are so it's not warm. There's like a
transactional
an El Nino
vibe
going
right?
on,
Yeah.
right? Like there's it's warm, but there's something else going on there,
Right.
And so I can't believe they didn't do it before the election just speaks volumes about all of those people that were making announcements before the election, right? Like we want to get on his good side, but Saudi, we have a vision, we have a plan, we are confident and comfortable where we are, and hopefully the relationship will improve because it needs to for the region and the benefit of the region. But I don't think that type of pressure is going to work, honestly. And it actually is a really good segue into my last bit of news, which is I'm very excited. To Beirut with love. It's my love letter to Beirut. I'm so happy and excited that the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia has made an official trip to Beirut, to Lebanon. Prince Faisal bin Farhan's visit is the first to Lebanon by a foreign minister in over 15 years. And it comes on the back of Lebanon appointing its first elected president in over 2 years, Joseph Aoun, and a new prime minister, Nawaf Salam, who was a diplomat and former head of the International Court of Justice. And it's so important. I mean, yes, when Lebanon did put pressure and say things about Saudi Arabia on TV, it was the Lebanese foreign minister, that's when things really went cold. Yes, there's been strained relations between Saudi and Lebanon, particularly because of his tensions had been increasing for years. But in 2021, when you had some direct kind of criticism of Saudi's foreign policy, the diplomatic kind of relations froze to some degree, as well as economic ties and trade between the two countries. So at the moment, the fact that Faisal bin Farhan was in Lebanon, he's also planning on meeting, or if he hasn't already, meeting Speaker Nabih Berri. He's also going to speak to outgoing caretaker Prime Minister Najib, and reestablishing and rekindling the diplomatic relations between the two countries. Saudi Arabia is part of a few countries, the US, France, Egypt, and Qatar, who have worked to install a new Lebanese president since the vacuum appeared 2 years ago. And since then, you've had some really interesting statements by investors thinking about going into Lebanon and rekindling the economy. Al-Walid bin Talal announcing on the 14th of January that he intends to reconstruct and reopen the Four Seasons in Beirut by the end of the year, praising what he called a new era in Lebanon. You had some UAE investors also talking about going in and investing, and I think the Emirati embassy reopened for the first time in a couple of years as well. So the economy looks like it's on its way to recovery. Diplomatic relations with the Gulf are improving, and this is great news. Everybody in the Gulf loves Beirut. I don't know if you've ever been, but I love Beirut. And so I'm so excited about the potential of really just finding a Lebanon that's more stable. And as Prince Faisal bin Farhan said, kind of giving it the opportunity to reestablish itself in its actual, what did he say? Let me just find the quote. Yes. And so what's exciting is also, in his visit, Prince Faisal bin Farhan was hopeful that the economic reforms would boost confidence in Lebanon's partners and open up the space for the country to, quote, regain its rightful place in the Arab and international spheres.
So good. Lebanon is so back. I mean, like a new era in Lebanon. It's so good to see this. To answer your question, I've not ever been to Lebanon, but I've been watching it from afar as like studying a situation that has like no hope and like increasingly less hope over time. And that meant a lot to my Saudi friends who used to vacation there or visit there or had familial ties there. So I'm always like kind of like rooting for them, but it just felt like there was just like, it was just like on a downward spiral forever, right? Currency crisis after currency crisis, so
political
it's just so
turmoil.
good. Political turmoil, yeah, which is basically an understatement. And it's just so good to see this.
Failed state.
And exactly. So yeah, nice note to end this show. Great segues in the news segment. I'm stoked about that.
I know.
And it's a new era for the 2030. I mean, we've got a lot of great conversations coming up, including several live interviews that we'll be doing towards the end of February with some heavy hitters. I'm going to keep it a secret, but it's super exciting. So I will see you, Dr. Hanaa, next time. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you so much.